Hey Summoners, thank you so much for attending my presentation on why Bard is building Statikk Shiv. Now, I know it sounds kinda int, but I swear to you it is completely viable this season. But before we get into why the item is built, we need to first know what Bard wants and what Statikk Shiv gives. Also, keep in mind, this video is made for patch 15.1, or whatever the new naming system they're using is. It's like 25.s1.1. Whatever it is, it's for that patch. Okay, so, Bard is one of the most versatile and iconic roaming supports in basically all of League. His entire playstyle revolves around leaving his ADC to lane alone into Blitz Draven, just to die trying to gank the Fed top laner. I'm only half joking, of course, but the majority of his power budget does go into his roaming capabilities. For example, his E, Magical Journey, lets him and his teammates portal through walls, which allows him to set up ganks unique to just him, and Kayn, and Zac, help his jungler steal objectives with a clutch portal, or just get around the map significantly faster than most other champions. His Q, Cosmic Binding, slows by 60% or stuns if it collides with another unit or a wall after it hits its target. He can leave health packs with his W, Caretaker's Shrine, to keep his ADC topped up on health while he roams, and his ultimate, or his R, Tempered Fate, can be used to hold someone in stasis to allow you and an ally to get an ideal position for a gank, save a teammate before you get to their lane. Overall, it's just a really good utility ultimate. Now, because almost all of Bard's abilities are focused on utility instead of damage, his only damage sources are his Q, Cosmic Binding, his auto attacks, and his passive, Traveler's Call. With Traveler's Call, whenever Bard collects enough chimes, he gains Meeps, which deal magic damage and slow enemies whenever Bard auto-attacks, as long as he has a Meep available. The more chimes he collects, the more powerful his Meeps get. He only gets the slow after 5 chimes. At 15 chimes, they begin to deal AoE damage, and whenever he hits 35 chimes, he gets an AP Titanic Hydra effect on every Meep auto. Bard's kit is insanely versatile, and because of that, he can abuse basically any item that's meta. With AP scalings on your Q, W, and passive, you can build like you're playing Brand or Zyra support with items like Liandry's or Imperial Mandate and have it be completely viable. To make sure the enemy top laner sees Bard more than they see their own father, he can go Deadman's, Force of Nature, or even Shirelia's to amplify his roaming even further. And, more recently, the pro play build for Bard, and every other somewhat tanky support, has been Lock It into Redemption, with Redemption being even better on Bard than most other tank supports due to the fact that its heal and shield power buffs the healing on Bard's W. Now, let's talk about Statikk Shiv, the item this whole video is about. Statikk Shiv is a marksman item, and despite Riot having a hate boner recently for any slightly viable ADC items, it's surprisingly good. Statikk Shiv gives you 45 attack damage, 30% attack speed, and 4% movement speed. On top of that, it provides wave clear and on-hit damage through its passive, Electro Spark, which gives your next 3 basic attacks bonus magic damage on hit, at 60 magic damage versus champions, increased to 85 against minions, which can also bounce to up to 5 additional targets. And, on top of that, if you get a takedown within 3 seconds of dealing damage to the champion that died, Electroshock resets the cooldown of Electro Spark. Another positive for the item, especially for supports, is that it only costs 2,700 gold, only a few shekels cheaper than the 2,900 gold Deadman's Plate, and its build path feels surprisingly good. Statikk builds out of a pickaxe, scout slingshot, and Rectrix, which are all very solid, affordable components. The Scout Slingshot gives 20% attack speed and 40 bonus magic damage on hit every 40 seconds, with its cooldown being reduced by a second every time you auto-attack. Pickaxe is Pickaxe, just 875 gold for 25 AD, nothing special. Now, the best component, Rectrix, gives 15 AD and importantly, 4% movement speed. So, why does Statikk Shiv work so well on Bard? For one, it gives him movement speed, the most broken stat in the game, which complements his roaming playstyle super well. But more importantly, it gives him an insane boost to his damage. In an ideal scenario where all 5 enemy champions are within 500 units of each other, about 4.5 Teemos apart, Statikk Shiv's Electro Spark can dish out up to 900 bonus magic damage after just 3 auto attacks. And that's not even considering the resets from Electroshock. If Bard can just keep getting takedowns, this item alone can add up to 2700 magic damage from just its passive in a team fight. Even in smaller fights with just 1 or 2 enemies, you're still getting an additional 180 to 540 magic damage from just Electro Spark. And don't forget, the extra AD boosts every single one of Bard's auto attacks, even when the passive from the item is gone and when his meeps are down, which helps a ton with his sustained DPS. The attack speed from the item also contributes to a higher DPS and gives a slight boost to Bard's burst damage, allowing him to unload his autos and meeps onto a CC'd target much faster. Plus, it makes clearing wards feel super nice. On top of all of this, it gives Bard insane wave clear, which can be used to generate tempo on the map by pushing out waves for your team. So, how do you actually build this? First off, grab Bloodsong. It's Bard's highest win rate support item, sitting at a respectable 51.23% win rate. For boots, you can either go Boots of Swiftness or Lucidity boots. Personally, I prefer Swifties, but the Challenger Bard OTP Lethyrus, I think it is, swears by Lucidity boots, which have a noticeably higher win rate, by about 3%. But they also only have an 8% pick rate, so take that with a grain of salt. Your first legendary item should be Dead Man's Plate in the majority of your games for the movement speed and tank stats. Your other options are a Locket of the Iron Solari if you need to deal with more mixed damage, or even a Force of Nature if the enemy team is primarily AP. After that, build Statikk Shiv as your second item, but trust me, do not build that shit first. You'll die faster than a shoddy whose smile lights up a room in a true crime podcast. Bard really needs those early game tank stats, because not having them just feels awful. And statistically, according to League of Items, building Statikk Shiv as your second legendary item has a 55.13% win rate, compared to just a 50.66% win rate whenever it's built first. Which honestly isn't that big of a difference, but it's clearly better as a 2-item spike. After that, you're playing Bard, so you can low-key just go Ultimate Bravery with your last few items. Personally, I like to go another tank item to help round out my defenses, like Abyssal Mask, or I'll pick up a Locket if I skipped it earlier, but anything that gives defensive stats, ability power, or movement speed is viable on this champion, so go crazy. And don't just take my word for it. I fear I'm just a hard-stuck Emerald support player with autism, like everyone else in Emerald if I'm being real. A bunch of actually good players like Team Liquid's Core JJ, one of the 2 good LCS support players, and Lethyrus, which, by the way, side tangent here. The entire reason I made this video is because I got stomped by Statikk Shiv Bard in one of my ranked games, so I googled it to try and find out why on God's green earth this tank support is building an ADC item, and it's working. So I found Lethyrus' video on it, and I watched it, and he spends all of 10 seconds actually explaining why Bard builds it. So I was like, okay, whatever. I'm gonna go through the wiki, the Bard mains Reddit, and all of that to make this video together to share with you guys why Bard builds it. So, thank you, Lethyrus, I guess. And that's everything for today's lecture, so thank you guys for attending, and now for the homework assignment. What are some of the weirdest builds you've seen recently on the Rift? Do they seem viable? Would you like me to cover any of them? Please explain your answer using 2 or more sentences, and don't forget to respond to a classmate's comment for bonus points. If you've made it this far, please consider subscribing, and have a good day.